Us, welcome to the Gran Torino, and thank you for joining me tonight. First of all, I'd like to send out my condolences to the family of the Japanese man that was involved in the tragic events that unfolded during the week here in Ireland. There's a Facebook page going around with a GoFundMe account to help fund his repatriation back to his country and assist his family in those. And I urge everybody, and I encourage everybody, to make a donation as much as you can. I blame myself. I blame myself because after the Lisbon Treaty, when we were told to vote again, I became disenfranchised with politics in this country, and I stopped voting. I became disenfranchised, as I say, and I walked away from it more or less. I became apathetic to it. What that means is no vote, no voice. So I have no say in what happened because I didn't contribute to the conversation. I didn't express my will through my vote. And it's so important to use your vote, because what that's allowed to happen is socialism has now grown unchallenged in this country. Left wing has become an unchallenged monster. It's allowing political correctness, multiculturalism to run wild. And these are the tenets of cultural Marxism. Cultural Marxism stemming from communism. Communism is a failed economic theory. It has failed worldwide time and time again. So what they've done is, rather than the oppressor and the oppressed, they've gone to the socialist view, the haves and the have-nots. They started that by attacking our cultures. They police our words. They police our use of language. Trinity College recently had an event where freshmen was decided was to be outlawed and banned. Freshman has always been the term that's been used through academia for first year students. We used to just call them freshers. They used to be known as just freshers. It was unisex in its description of people. Other terminologies, hate speech, all this kind of stuff, that's all protected. Hate speech is protected under freedom of speech. You have the right to say anything you want. Whether you're offended or not, zero fucks are given. As I say, the controlling of our language, you can't say this, you can't say that, making us work within the socialist viewpoint, as in critical theory. The use of critical theory is whatever fits in this rectangular box of socialist view, the truth or facts or anything that lies beyond that might help to explain other phenomena is totally ignored and disregarded, and only the view of socialism through the square of, or the prism of socialism is accepted. So what that entails is we've lost the use of our critical thinking faculties. Two sides of the argument, for and against whatever argument or hypothesis is proposed. Critical theory, as I say, is forced. This is the doctrine, this is the line, this is the use of language, this is how we do it. It's like thought police. It's only a step away from thought police. So I encourage people to resist this. Go back to critical thinking. Go back to having the debate. We never had a national debate on joining PESCO. Our unelected Taoiseach just signed us up to become part of the superstate that is becoming the failed economic Brussels experiment. And that's being applied. The application of that experiment is open borders. Case in point, open borders. We have no control over who enters or who leaves or who is here in this country. And we're also struggling now from asylum abuses. People seeking asylum are looking for refugee status and are coming to this country, and there are genuine people that need to be helped, but just having unfettered control, uncontrol and allowing people to move free market is being proven to not work, and in front of our very eyes. In front of our very eyes this is failing. Case in point, Balbriggan. Balbriggan, the week before, we had 1,000 concerned parents marching on the local Garda station to ask them to what they're doing to help control the gangs that are running out of control in Balbriggan. I don't see anybody covering that on mainstream socket puppet mainstream media news, and not covering the true extent of what's going on in the country. In their eyes, they feel they're shielding us from it. I ask you to resist this again, because I implore you to start using your vote. I implore you to start using critical thinking. Look at both sides of the argument, and don't just listen to what I call the vocal minority. They are still just the vocal minority. Dundalk Dundalk was a failure by the state. It was a failure to apply our sovereign laws, our laws of our land, and we were usurped by the Brussels experiment. The failure of the state to apply the laws is that the young man in question was detained on the 1st of January by the state. He couldn't produce any papers, he couldn't produce any identification papers to why he was in this country, and he was told to make his way to Dublin and seek asylum down there. He wasn't taken in off the streets to be processed, to find out who he is, where he's come from and what's going on. He was allowed to drift back on our streets again. Another failure of the state. And that failure led to the protection of those children. Those two men, they are young men, very young men. I'd still class them as children in my eyes. And failure to protect both of them people. One by being allowed to roam unfettered, unchecked, unchallenged around our country. And the second one to protect that Japanese man who came here legally. He was living here, travelling around legally in our countries. And that in turn fails to protect my children. My children are of a similar age and walk these streets. And through that failed experiment, they are now under threat. And I feel compelled to speak out and ask our local politicians and put pressure on our government to ask why this failed experiment is allowed to continue. With that, I ask you to email the Minister for Integration, the Minister for Immigration, david.stanton@oir.ie. And I ask you to stick an email into us, and not with the expectation of getting a reply or some sort of answer. Let his inbox fill. Show him the sheer numbers of your vocal disapproval of what's occurring and how our government is managing our borders. Now I refer to the old analogy, and I assure you, our numbers are so few, our numbers are so many and so great that they will literally drown in our piss. If you express your will by just expressing via a simple email to the minister's email account, and show him the frightening numbers that's in his inbox. Show him when the next vote or the next general election that's called, and we will vote because we are wide awake to this problem now. We've always been wide awake, but we've been restricted in our ways to express our opinion on what's going on because we're going to be shouted down as racist or fascist. There are no fascists or racists in this country. There might be small groups of people, but they exist in every society. But the only way that you expose fascism and stuff like that is by shining a light on it, not hiding it away or ignoring it. To that end, on the 3rd of February, there's a meeting, there is a conversation being held where Mr. Nigel Farage will be asked to speak, our own Mr. John Waters will be asked to speak, but I guarantee you, outside that, the attendance time when it's due to attend, that you will find the usual rabble will be banging and clattering outside of the RDS where it's being held. There'll be the threat of violence, but I guarantee you all members or anybody that's attending that will be going there to listen to what these people have to say, and they have every right to speak. Don't, because Nigel Farage is a British citizen, that he does not have the right to speak on a matter that he knows, or a subject that he knows quite well. He spent 25 years fighting for Brexit and he achieved that. And again, the failed Brussels experiment is trying to usurp the democratic will of the people again in United Kingdom by trying to bring in a soft Brexit or put controls on it, nay in fact to overrule the democratic will of the people yet again. Totalitarian bureaucracies should not be allowed to thrive. They should be resisted at all costs. With that, I implore you, I beseech you, contact the minister, drop him an email, just fill up his inbox, david.stanton@oireachtas.ie. Let's get the conversation going. Let's have the national conversation. Why an air exit, whatever you choose to call it, is in our own interest for the good of all citizens in this country. We need to start controlling our borders. We need to start looking after our own economies, because that failed system is leading us down a very dark path. Thank you very much.